It began with the smallest things, details, so fragile. They could have slipped through unnoticed if I hadn't been so tuned to her every move. The late-night texts, the way she smiled faintly at her phone, tucking it away as soon as I entered the room. The sudden work calls that never seemed to happen before. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. I couldn't tell anymore. For 2 years, Lena had been my calm, my anchor. We met at a photography workshop in the city, her with that messy bun and a camera that looked too big for her hands. Me with a stupid grin and a borrowed lens. We clicked, literally and emotionally. She had that effortless warmth, the kind that made you want to open up even when you'd sworn never to. For a long time, I believed what we had was unshakable. But lately, something had shifted. It wasn't just her schedule. It was her silence. The way she'd drift off mid-conversation, eyes tracing something distant I couldn't see. She'd laugh at jokes I didn't hear. And when I'd ask what was so funny, she'd brush it off with a casual, "Oh, nothing. Just a meme." But her eyes lingered longer than they should. I told myself not to spiral, that people are allowed to change. But there's a certain ache that comes when your gut whispers louder than your logic. One night, she was in the shower and her phone buzzed on the table. I shouldn't have looked. I know that, but I did. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Eli. No last name, just Eli, the message said. You free tomorrow night. That was it. Simple, harmless. But to me, it was an earthquake. When she came out wrapped in a towel, humming softly, I tried to act normal. I asked her if she wanted tea. She said yes. Her voice was light. To light, I stared at her from across the kitchen table while she sipped her chamomile, eyes lost in thought. That's when I realized something else her ring. The silver band I'd given her on our first anniversary, it wasn't on her finger. Forgot your ring today? I asked. She blinked. Oh yeah. I left it by the sink. Her tone was smooth, rehearsed even, my stomach twisted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every tiny change, her new perfume, the extra time she spent getting ready, the way she suddenly started locking her phone. I lay awake listening to her breathe beside me, and every inhale felt like a lie. I didn't want to be that gither paranoid boyfriend, the one who checks phones and counts hours. But my mind had already written its own script, and I was helpless to stop it. The next morning, while she was getting dressed, I asked, "Who's Eli?" She paused mid. "A co-worker," she said. "He's helping with the marketing project." Her eyes didn't flinch. Her tone didn't waver. But I caught something, a fraction of a second where her lips tightened before she smiled. That's when my fear began to evolve into obsession. I started tracking her schedule mentally, when she left, when she returned, how long the drives took. I even started counting her messages, how often she typed, when she was online. And yet, I said nothing. I didn't want to fight. I wanted proof. 2 days later, I told my friend Marcus about it. Marcus was blunt, never sugarcoated things. He listened quietly, then said, "Man, you're going to lose your mind over this if you don't know the truth. Either confront her or find out yourself." "Find out how?" I asked. He grinned. "Simple. Let's test her." At first I laughed it off, but the seed was planted. A test. A harmless test, I told myself. Something that would give me peace, except there's nothing harmless about mistrust. That night, Lena was asleep beside me, phone charging on the nightstand. I stared at it, tempted again. But instead of reaching for her phone, I reached for mine. I created a fake account, no photo, just a random name. Eli's friend. It felt ridiculous. But the curiosity overpowered the guilt. The plan was simple. Marcus would use that account to message her on social media, pretending to be someone she didn't know. Nothing too forward. Just friendly banter to see how she'd respond. It wasn't about catching her. It was about catching my own fears in the act days past. The first night, she didn't reply. The second, she left a heart emoji on one of Eli's friend's comments under her photo. My pulse raced. By the third night, they were chatting. Marcus sent screenshots. Her replies were light, teasing. Haha, you're funny. I could use a laugh after today. Innocent words, but to me, every syllable was a crack widening in the floor beneath us. Marcus messaged me. She's responding fast. Bro, you sure you want to keep this up? I told him yes, because by then it wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about control. A week later, Lena started dressing differently. She wore that blue dress I hadn't seen in months, the one she said didn't fit anymore. She smiled in the mirror, and I wondered, was she smiling for me or for the stranger behind the screen? My heart screamed to confront her, but my pride whispered to wait. I wanted to see how far she'd go, how much she'd risk before guilt caught up to her. One night, she came home later than usual, said she'd been at work, but her hair smelled like rain, not office egg. She looked at me as if daring me to ask .idn single quotes. Instead, I smiled and said, "How was work?" She hesitated, then kissed my cheek. "Exhausting," she said softly. When she went to shower, I checked her bag. Inside was a folded note. No handwriting, just a printed line. Next Friday. Same place. I felt my chest tighten like a fist. I didn't sleep that night. Every time she moved beside me, I imagined her with someone else, laughing, talking, touching. It was poison self-inflicted, but still poison by morning, I decided. I wouldn't confront her yet. I'd wait 2 more weeks, just long enough to see what she'd do, just long enough to be sure. I had no idea that in those 2 weeks, I was the one being watched, and that she already knew everything. The thing about secrets is, they don't stay still. They breathe, they grow, and before you realize it, they start whispering in every quiet room. Those next 2 weeks were a performance, one I didn't know I'd been cast in. Every morning I smiled. Every evening I pretended to sleep beside her while my thoughts spun like blades. I was both the detective and the criminal. Hiding my own lies under the weight of suspicion, Marcus kept feeding me updates, screenshots, messages, proof. At least. That's what I thought it was. "Dude," he said one night over the phone, "she's definitely into it. She's laughing at everything I say." "Keep it going," I told him. My voice sounded steady, but my hands were trembling. He paused. "You sure, man? You look for proof long enough, you'll find it, Tevin, if it's not really there." I ignored him, because by then, I needed to be right more than I needed to be happy. That Friday, Lena said she had a late meeting. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, kissed her on the forehead, and said, "Drive safe." As soon as the door closed, I followed her. It was raining a light drizzle that made the streetlights blur like watercolor. I kept my headlights off, driving 2 cars behind. She stopped at a small cafe near the park. the kind of quiet spot where we used to go on Sunday mornings. My heart twisted. Through the window, I saw her sitting alone. She ordered a latte, checked her phone, then looked around. No one came. 15 minutes passed. 20. She never met anyone. She just sat there, staring at her cup, lost in thought. Then she stood, paid, and left. I should have felt relief, but instead I felt ... uneasy because, if she wasn't meeting him, then what was that note for? When she came home, she smiled. "You're still awake?" She asked. "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone casual. "How was the meeting?" "Long, boring," she sighed. "You know how it is." I nodded, and she kissed my forehead before heading to bed. That night, guilt started to creep in. Maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe Marcus was right. But the next day, everything shifted again. Lena began acting strangely. She'd leave her phone on the table, screen unlocked, like she wanted me to look. She'd mention co-workers I'd never heard of, laugh at texts, and then show me, but only after a pause, like she was deciding whether to let me in. It was subtle, but I felt it. She was playing me one evening. I checked my messages with Marcus and saw something off. The screenshots he'd sent before gone, deleted. I asked him why. He swore he hadn't removed them. A cold wave washed over me. I tried to log in to the fake account we'd used to message her. Password -invalid. I reset it. Still nothing. Then a new message popped up on my main account. From her, hey, it said, "We need to talk." When I got home that night, she was waiting at the kitchen table. The lights were dim. Her phone sat in front of her, unlocked, screen glowing faintly. "Did you have a good day?" she asked softly. "Yeah, you." "Interesting," she said, with a hint of irony. "I found something today." My pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" She turned her phone toward me. My fake profile stared back, same username, same picture. "You know," she said, "you're terrible at hiding things." My throat went dry. "Lena, I save it," she said quietly. "I know Marcus helped. You used his number once by mistake." She laughed bitterly. "A rookie error." I didn't speak. Couldn't? Was this a joke? A social experiment? Or were you just trying to prove something? Her words hit harder than any confession could have. I tried to explain, told her about the texts, the perfume, the name Eli. She listened without interrupting. Then she smiled softly, painfully. "You'll really think I'd cheat on you?" She whispered. "I didn't want to," I said. But everything looked wrong. She stood up, walked past me, and opened a drawer. Inside was a small notebook. She placed it on the table and slid it toward me. "I was planning a surprise," she said. "An exhibit. For your photography, Eli's the event coordinator. That note you found. Meeting times." I stared at the notebook. Inside were sketches of layouts, vendor names, and my own photographs printed out. Every page screamed devotion. Her handwriting, her plans, her effort. I felt something inside me collapse, but she wasn't done. "You think I didn't notice the fake account?" she said. "I knew on day 2. Marcus doesn't know how to spell definitely, you do. Same typo, every time." She sat back down, folding her arms. "So I decided to see what you'd do. How far you'd go." I looked up. Her eyes weren't angry, they were tired. "You played along," I said slowly. She nodded. "I wanted to see how much you trusted me. Turns out You didn't at all. The silence between us was heavier than any scream could be. Lena, I'm sorry, I said. You just didn't believe in me, she cut in. And that's worse than cheating. Her words echoed. I realized then that all my doubts, my traps, my investigations, they'd killed something we could never resurrect. Innocence. She stood, walked to the window, and whispered, I wasn't lying about needing space. What does that mean? It means I'm leaving for a while, she said softly. Maybe you'll learn that love isn't about proof. It's about trust. I wanted to stop her, to reach out, but my body refused to move. She packed a small bag that night. No yelling, no tears, just quiet finality. Before she left, she looked back once. I never cheated, she said. But I also can't stay with someone who thinks I could. And then she was gone. Days passed, weeks. The apartment became a museum of her absence. Coffee mugs, hair ties, a half-read book on the couch. I thought about calling her, apologizing again. But what would I say? That I didn't mean to doubt her. That my love was sincere, even when my actions weren't. Every word felt hollow. Marcus stopped by once. He didn't say much, just shook his head. Man, you played yourself. He muttered. He was right. I started going through my old photos, the ones she'd organized for that exhibit. Her handwriting was everywhere. This one's his favorite. He hates this angle, but it's perfect. Remember this morning light. She saw beauty in everything, even in me, and I repaid her with suspicion. One night, I stood on the balcony, staring at the city lights. The rain had started again, soft and endless. I finally understood what trust really meant. It wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing to stay even when you had reasons to. Doubt, and I had failed that choice. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that Lena wasn't done with me yet, because the game she'd turned round was still unfolding. A month passed before I heard from her again. It came as a message. Simple, distant, we need to talk. I stared at those 4 words for minutes, maybe hours. My first instinct was to delete it, to protect what little dignity I still had left. But curiosity, that old disease of mine, pulled me back in. We met at the same cafe where I'd followed her weeks ago. The same rain-patterned windows, the same faint scent of coffee and regret. She was already there when I arrived, wearing a grey coat and a look that I couldn't read. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Hi, she replied, her tone calm. Practiced, the silence that followed was thick, like the air before a storm. I wanted to ask if she was okay, if she'd been sleeping, if she missed me, but none of that felt fair. Finally, she said, You remember the account you made? The fake one. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I remember everything. Well, she said, stirring her coffee, I kept it. That caught me off guard. You what? I didn't delete it. I used it. I blinked. For what? She leaned back. For something you never thought about understanding you. I frowned. What are you talking about? She smiled faintly. You spent all that time trying to test me, but you never asked yourself why you needed proof. You weren't protecting us. You were protecting yourself from being the one left behind. So I decided to see how deep that fear went. My pulse quickened. Lena, what did you do? She took a deep breath. I started messaging you. As her, it took me a moment to process. As who? As the girl you thought was Metha, one Marcus pretended to be talking to. I created a mirror of your game. I wanted to see how honest you'd be when you thought you were unseen. I stared at her. You mean those weird spam messages I got? That was you. She nodded. Every single one. I remembered them now. Random accounts messaging me things like, if you really loved her, why test her? And what are you afraid of losing? I had ignored most of them, thinking they were bots. But she wasn't done. I also reached out to Marcus, she said. He told me everything, how you planned it, how you couldn't stop checking. I felt heat crawl up my neck. So this meeting is what? A punishment? No, she said softly. It's the ending you wrote for us. I just came to make sure you understand it. She took a sip of coffee, then looked at me with a strange tenderness. You know what's funny, she said. You were right about one thing. There was another guy. I froze. Eli. I asked, my voice cracking. She smiled sadly. No, not him. Someone else. Who? The man you became, she said. The version of you that didn't trust, didn't ask, didn't love. He was the stranger who stood between us. And I couldn't compete with him. Her words hit harder than any confession of cheating ever could. I tried to speak, but my voice was gone. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. This is for you, she said. Inside was a single photograph, one of the shots she'd taken of me during our first trip together. I was laughing, looking away from the camera, sunlight painting my face. On the back, she'd written, "The man who believed in love." I wanted to remind you, she said softly, of who you were before fear took over. My throat tightened. Lena, I can't undo what I did. But I can change. I swear, I've learnt. She shook her head. You can't promise that to me anymore. You have to promise it to yourself. She stood, buttoned her coat, and reached for her umbrella. I have a flight tomorrow, she said. A job offer in Berlin. I think I'm going to take it. Berlin, I repeated numbly. Yeah, I need something new. Somewhere I can breathe again. Will you ever come back? I asked. She smiled faintly. Maybe, when you stop chasing ghosts. And then she left. Just like that. No tears, no dramatic goodbye. Only the soft sound of her heels fading against the rain. Weeks went by. I didn't hear from her again. I deleted the fake account, then deleted my messages with Marcus. I even stopped checking her social media. But the quiet didn't bring peace. It brought reflection. I started journaling, something I'd never done before. I wrote about the lies I told myself, the idea that love could be measured, that faith required evidence, that trust could be earned through tricks. It was during one of those late-night writing sessions that I received another message. No name, no profile picture, just text. Do you still doubt everything? My heart stopped. I typed back, who is this? No answer. Hours later, another message appeared. Maybe one day you'll forgive yourself. That was it. No closure, no signature. Just that sentence, floating in the dark. I never knew if it was her. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it didn't matter, because by then I had already learned that love doesn't die when someone leaves. It dies when you stop believing in it, and I had killed it long before she packed her bags. Months turned into a year. I picked up my camera again, the one she gave me. Photography became therapy, a way to capture honesty in light and shadow. I stopped chasing meaning and started noticing it instead. The small smiles of strangers, the chaos of city rain, the empty spaces where people used to stand. At my first small gallery show, I hung one photograph at the center of the room. It was her that shot from that trip, the one she'd given me in that envelope. Beneath it, a title, The Lesson of Trust. People stopped to look. Some smiled, some asked questions. I just said, it's a story about love and what happens when you test it too hard. A man asked, did the couple make it? I smiled faintly. In their own way, I said. They learned something neither could have understood alone. He nodded thoughtfully, not realizing I was talking about myself. As the night ended, I stepped outside. The sky was dark, filled with city glow. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel that ache of wondering where she was or who she was with, because now it wasn't about losing her, it was about finding me again. I walked home through the drizzle, the kind of rain that softens everything it touches. Passing by the cafe, I stopped and glanced through the window. For a second, I could almost see her sitting there smiling faintly, eyes alive, holding that same old coffee cup. I almost waved. Then I realized she wasn't there. Just memory, just light. And yet something inside me whispered that maybe, somewhere across the ocean, she still remembered the boy who once believed too much and then not enough. Love didn't die that day, it just changed shape. It became a lesson etched into me forever. Never test love. It always fails the one who does the testing.